You are never alone. You are never alone. Just reach into your heart and Allah is always there. You are never alone. You are never alone. Through sorrow and through grief, through happiness and peace, you are never.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A new episode of Family Issues. Usually God sends to us presents or tests covered by different wrappings. This means that the scenarios might be different and you might expect, for example, due to a certain event that's not good in your mind or to your mind, and it just simply become just the wrapping of a good thing. So usually we invite people to be patient to see what is this wrapping, what is this apparently tragedy or apparently tragic incident or event, and at the end you find that it's a good thing that God wanted to give to you and to test you before you have it. Anyway, let me first welcome you and say that, as usually in this program, we are ready to receive all your comments, all your questions. We want to cooperate together to create a strong family, very cooperative family, very emotional family, because these are skills of a good family, and this is the main issue that this program is interested in. And consider me your host and your helper and your guide, if you please, in such types of issues, because I'm interested so much in helping you and helping every member in the family, the child, the mother, the father, and everyone. Let me first also give you our telephone numbers in order to cooperate with us. On air we have two numbers, 002 02 38 555 248 and 249. The numbers are on the screen and you can call us at any time to cooperate and join us in this very warm familial topic episode. Actually, the topic itself is very familiar too today. Remember, in the last episode we've spoken about what's called sleep disorders. Remember, we discussed insomnia, we discussed sleepiness, we discussed sleep talking, sleepwalking, every strange thing that happens in sleeping. We discussed bedwetting during sleeping and so on. Today, a similar topic is going to be dealt with in this episode, which is the problems that face us with our children and we ourselves during eating. That's, in other words, what was meant in the medical books and the psychological books under the title of eating disorders. Eating disorders. First, let me remind you that in a previous series before, we've been speaking about what's called the food and psychology. Actually, this episode is a little bit similar to that one, but here we are mainly interested in the problems that face our children during the process of feeding or drinking, and different things that might appear in the mind when we go on in this process with our children or we ourselves at homes. Let me first also say that food is a situation, or feeding is a situation, where the family gather together in the dining room, for example, or around a table, whether this table is rounded or rectangular or on the floor itself, as happens in some of the environments. In all the conditions, food and feeding is considered to be a situation, a social one, where we gather together, and it's better or it's preferred that the atmosphere around this process is happy and everyone is smiling, is sitting at ease, because this helps digestion and absorption and consequently growth and having everything good from food. which is the charity of God to everyone on earth. GIT, this is the expression or the abbreviation of the system related to eating in medicine. GIT, gastrointestinal system. And this GIT or gastrointestinal tract, starting from the mouth and ending into the opening the anus, all this long channel, which in some calculations reached kilometers, are inside the human body. And what's maybe astonishing is that this tube, this big tube, with its symptoms and signs, sometimes it looks like a mirror for the psychological situation or the psychological atmosphere that a person lives in. Therefore, you find so many of the symptoms, doctors are interested in asking about them during medical histories, whether in psychology or in the gastroenterology field, are related to the signs, these signs we are speaking about. For example, they are asking about nausea, about vomiting, about colicky pains, about bloating or inflating of the abdomen, about distension, about difficulty in digestion, about acidity. I feel some sort of acidity during swallowing the food, difficulty, what's called dysphagia, diarrhea, constipation. All these different signs are to a great extent sometimes related to psychological condition and not to medical or organic reasons. So doctors and specialists and even people from us, the members of the family, should be minded so much that this might be related, this sign in my son or my wife or my husband might be related to a psychological stress, for example, which is very common. I know so many families who, when they are going into an examination or they are waiting for some news which is very important to them, they feel very anxious, and the way anxiety comes out is through, as I say, signs of this system in the form of vomiting or feeling of nausea or increased appetite or decreased appetite. Okay, so we have to put in our mind that solving the main problem helps to solve this symptom. Some people unfortunately are occupied by the symptoms, leaving the main cause, and therefore the problem is not solved. By the way, as we have said, the setting or the way we are putting the food and the lighting and the aeration and the smell, the dishes and its shape, and if there is some people put candles, some people put good ways of garnishing the food itself. All this affects the psychology and opens, it's called the appetizer, it opens the appetite of the people to eat, or closes also the appetite and lets them feel what's called indigestion. It's not, of course, advised to discuss points of problems and issues of different ideas or different opinions or the problems of the family. It should not be discussed during eating and in the process of lunch or breakfast or so, because it makes people sometimes suffering from whether loss of appetite or affecting the process of digestion and absorption of food. First, let me also tell you that in the young age of children, I mean in the preschoolers or pre-KGs, some of the new languages nowadays are taught to children in some of the countries, like sign languages. It's like those for dumb and deaf. The sign language in children is different. It symbolizes, I've been speaking about this in one of the previous episodes. You just make certain movement as a symbol or as in order to let the parent conclude what you want. For example, if I put my hand like this in mouth, it means that I want food, mom. I want, or like this, I want to drink. Some people get afraid of letting their children learn sign languages because they think that this is going to come in the place of the verbal way of expression. No, we remind them that you can tell them both types of languages, no risk of losing the main wording and linguistic skills by using helping cues or movements by the hands. And this is very similar to what happens in autistic children. I'm speaking about normal children, but in autistic children sometimes people or the children themselves use what's called pointing sign. They take the finger of the parents and say, they do not say sometimes, they are non-verbal, so they just point to what they want, but they do not speak. And some people complain of this, and some of the mothers I know refuse to respond to this pointing technique because they are afraid that this is going to become or to replace the wording way or the process of talking. But we tell them again, leave the children to use this pointing language or to use any other language. It's not going to be replacing the main language. It's a helper language in order to tell you what they want. For even if temporary time, this language was used. Remember when we've been speaking in other episodes about the differences between in infancy between artificial feeding and bottle feeding, and it's not, of course, the situation now to speak about the differences, but the point is from the psychological point of view. I've said this before in one of the episodes, but I'm going to remind you that the situation is completely different. A mother who is in the setting holding her baby, as I've said before, last episode I was having a doll and I similarized this to you, but just to remember, she takes the child in her hug and in a very calm and a very warm way, she hugs the child and she squeezes him to some extent in order to let him not just breastfeed or feed him the milk, she is feeding him also care, love and passion. Okay, so this is completely different from artificial or bottle feeding. To put a plastic bottle in the mouth of a child and give him the milk, which is the concentration of the milk during the whole feeding or the whole time of feeding in this bottle is the same. The concentration of the milk or the powder put in the milk is the same during all the time of the of the artificial bottle feeding. But in breastfeeding, the concentration of the milk itself is differentiating gradually during the breastfeeding. This means, in other words, that in the beginning, when the mother starts to breastfeed her child, for example, the amount of proteins in the milk is high, and the amount of fats and carbohydrates are little. But in the middle of the fed, you find that the amount of protein comes down and the carbohydrates come up, and at the end you find that the fats become the highest percentage, and this helps the child to feel satiety and to feel that he's not hungry, and this eases him to go into sleep. Let us go a break and come back to continue our talk about eating disorders.
You are never alone. You are never alone.
Ark of Noah.
We're going to be mentioning the significance of the Ark of Noah.
Knowledge is the essence of everything. Once you get the knowledge, then it generates the desire and the motivation, and then it brings about the action.
And we're going to be discussing the state of the Ummah and the division which unfortunately has appeared in it, and the methodology of trying to arrive at the right path.
Your system of knowledge or your system of motivation are hit by any of these threats, you will definitely go astray and you will be suffering from a disease in the heart.
We're also going to be discussing what Allah wants from us.
How can we make that? Allah gave us the revelation. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing first and foremost the companions. If they believe in what you have believed in, then they are guided. So the real guidance is what the Prophet ﷺ and the companions were upon.
Join Sheikh Mutassim in the program Ark of Noah and discover the answers to these questions. Dear viewers, Hoda programs can be watched in the English section of the in-flight entertainment directory on board all Saudi airline flights, domestic and international. Sit back, relax and enjoy watching Hoda's entertaining and enlightening shows on your trip. Hoda wishes you a safe and successful journey. Hoda, a light in every home.
The tension there, what about the North Korean nuclear program and the six-party talks? How will the tension there affect a relationship between US and China?
They did that early in 1993, and after long discussion and negotiation, finally they stopped the program.
Will the world be able to stop this flow of secrets? Will it affect international relations? Or where there is simply, basic known facts for most experts and most diplomats?
And we don't know if there's more to come. It's information war.
You are never alone.
Again, we are speaking about eating disorders, and some problems in such types of disorders are just due to bad way of raising children. It's not due to something organic or due to mental disorder or due to a psychiatric problem in the child or in the man. No, it's just the wrong way of raising a child or the wrong way of delivering food for a long time, chronicity or long time in bad situations or in stressed situations. And this reminds us when people get into quarrels and battles during feeding. The mother and the father get together into quarrel and the children are eating and hearing these sounds and shouting and throwing things and maybe spanking each other. This is horrible, and this affects the way of digestion of children. And I see so many teenagers who are having difficulty in eating, difficulty in digesting the food. It's a very bad and difficult experience for them. And when you discuss the history with them, you find at the end that there is a big problem in the family, and everyone is suffering from the dialogues that are going on during the eating process. Let us have this phone first from Abdullah from Egypt. Assalamu alaikum, Abdullah.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله. جزاك الله خيرا.
Jazana wa jazaak. Are you following up, Abdullah, in this series, in this episode?
Yes, I like it very much, but I want to ask about...
Please.
I have a problem that I'm always anxious, very nervous, and I was thinking if there is any kind of food that help remove anxiety,
Yes.
or make me, or something that lead me to calm down.
That's a good question, Abdullah. That's a good question. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I was naturally going to discuss what Abdullah were asking us about. Abdullah is mentioning the topic of also food and psychology, or food and mood. Does food affect the mood? Because he says in his question that so many times he suffers from the anxiety conditions. He feels that he is anxious, he is maybe afraid, he is nervous sometimes. Does food has a relation or has a thing to do with the condition, the psychological condition? In other words, he wants to say, can I eat something or drink something that makes me more cool or more calm, or that there are other foods that makes me nervous or depressed? Well, the studies actually came to very similar results to what you are speaking about, but putting in our minds that the effect of these foods, of course, and or drinks or beverages usually is not instant. I mean, it takes about not less than quarter an hour to affect, for example, when you are drinking, or half an hour when you are eating, to affect your mood or to affect the way you are thinking. Let me continue the answer, but after receiving this another telephone call from Omar from Nigeria. Assalamu alaikum, Omar.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Allah yakrim. You are following us, Omar?
Yes, sir, I'm calling from Nigeria, sir.
Do you have any comment or question about the topic of eating disorders or something like this?
Yes, sir. I just called to greet you, and I want you to help me with a prayer so that I want to get married, sir.
You want to get married? Please. Okay, go on, Omar.
I just want to greet you, and I really appreciate this, your program.
Thank you very much, Omar, because this encourages me, of course, and makes me happy, of course. But I want you also to give me your criticism. If there is something wrong, please tell us in order to modify the program.
I want you to modify this program due to the way that our people, our women, they used to dress up at home, the way we used to interact with them during the time that we want to get married. So
yes.
completely different with what the Prophet ﷺ teaches us.
Well, thank you very much, Omar, and at your service, of course. Omar reminds us that to his mind, most of the episodes are going in the way of children and the line of raising children, but he is asking us and suggesting to just to shift a little to the topics of making a new family or to marriage. This is a very precious suggestion, Omar, and of course, out of talk, instantly we are going to, inshallah, to apply this maybe in the next episode. But remind you, at the beginning of this program, I think this was in about 4 or 5 months ago, we started by episodes about how to make a new family, how to build new blocks or bricks in the family, how to choose, how to modify the relation. But anyway, we are going from now on also to maybe to navigate in all the stations of family relation, sometimes on children, sometimes on marital relations, and how to choose and how to deal with problems of marriage. Of course, this is we are at your service, and I'm very thankful for you for this cooperation with us. This is the positive behavior that I want from my viewers. Again, to the answer of Abdullah's question, well, some drinks or some beverages, like, for example, and this is unique, and I've said this before, coffee and Nescafe are very well known to have two different effects on children, teenagers, and on adults. In adults, of course, we know that such types of beverages makes the person alert, focused, having attention and concentrating, and very focused, very accurate. But in the same time, it makes them nervous, and it makes them, a little bit stressed and hyper, or going on and coming back in a way that looks as if they are hyperactive, okay? But this is completely the opposite and different from what happens to children. Children, if you give your child few sips or few mouthfuls of coffee or Nescafe or such types of beverages like cappuccinos, it makes them also have two things. Number one, it makes them very alert, focused, okay? And they are not easily distracted from what they read or what they are looking at. And in the same times, something different from what happens to adults happens in this case. It makes them less moving or less hyperactive, or in other words, maybe hypoactive, okay? Because those children who are, moving here and there, and we call them accident prone because of their hyperactivity. If you give them 70% of children having Nescafe or coffee, after a quarter an hour and for about 1 hour, you are going to find them more silent, more calm, less moving, and more focused. This is very important. And the mood is better. In the contrast, what happens during drinking some other types of beverages is the opposite in the mood and the movement of children and adults. But let me also again answer a third phone from Salma from USA. KSA, yes, Salma. Assalamu alaikum, Salma.
Walaikum salam, sir. I have this problem with my son who
Yes.
is 10 years old.
10 years old?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Go on, Salma, please.
He's 10 years old.
Yes.
And then he has this eating habit, eating a little faster.
Faster, yes.
Yeah, he eats faster, so he gets this lower abdomen pain.
Yeah.
So how could I...
Well, Salma, let me ask you a question. Does he collect the food in his mouth? I mean, his cheek is full of...
He chews faster and then...
Chews faster. She was faster. Okay.
Maybe I have 2 kids, elder kids, so when he was small, maybe I fed him faster. I think so.
Well, of course, God helps you in this responsibility.
Yeah, I was listening to you, and then I thought maybe I should make a call and...
Thank you very much, Selma. And I think this type of mothers, I'm sure that she is a very caring or a very careful mother about her kids, to the degree that she joined us in this debate about food and feeding and this important process. And as she have said, maybe, of course, she is having other children that makes her a little bit stressed during feeding her children. But let me tell you something, Salma. In all over the world, it takes not less than 1 hour to feed children. All the children around the world, in Europe, in America, in Africa, in every place, children feeding is a difficult process. It's not that easy work at all. Because, you know, all the time they are moving here and coming there and trying to play during food and trying to pick things and trying to see the TV and open the door and pick the eraser in order to do everything in the same time. This is the problem of feeding children. And of course they spit here and they throw, it's a messy process. So, of course, maybe I want just to focus on your question, which is that her child, her 10 years old child, chews fast. And there is a proverb that's usually said by Turkish old people. They say, chew your food or the bolus or the amount of food you put in your mouth, chew for 44 times, make your mouth chewing or the teeth grind the food for 44 times. This is, of course, something maybe funny, but you know, Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, said something similar to this. I remember a very important hadith in this, which was supported by the religious people. He said, peace and blessings be upon him, listen the size of the amount of food you put in your mouth and elongate the time of chewing. Remember, there are 2 phrases in this hadith. The first is, listen the amount. This means that when you eat, just take a small piece and eat, not a big one. Some people, you know, take a big piece of bread and have, as if they are, you know, carrying something, and they put everything in their mouth. This is not, of course, healthy. Make the amount of food you are eating during one time very small, and take your time to chew, because this helps you to get the benefits from food and to feel, in order not to feel any indigestion or difficulty during digestion, and you are going to get very good amount of absorption and relaxation during the food in this way. So I think that children who chew fast, one of 2 things to my mind. Number 1, either as Mrs. Salma was saying, she is in a hurry or in a mess, the children, and she wants to finish this task rapidly before, for example, her husband comes, or she has another task. God help, of course, her. But the children, during this time by time, they feel they are stressed, and the child gets the habit of chewing, or let us call it partial chewing, not complete chewing, because he's chewing fastly. Some children, as I asked her or I told her, collect the food in their mouth, as if you find the oral cavity full of food, stored food, and sometimes they throw it up, or sometimes they eat it after they take all the type of the food. You find their mouths are inflated by food, and then they eat it. Sometimes this indicates that there is a behavioral problem. There is some sort of stress. The child collects the food inside his oral cavity and is not grinding it, just mixing it with his saliva, and this sometimes happens in children who feel that they are ignored. They are ignored, sometimes of them, as if they are ignoring also the food in their mouth. Sometimes this attracts the attention of the mother, and the child wants his mother all the time to be attracted to her child, as if they are seeking the attention. And every time you find the mother say, Ahmed, eat the food, don't collect it in your mouth, eat it all the time. And by this way, he guarantees that she is all the time in contact with her child. So this is the first point, stress around the table. The second point is that sometimes also, in addition to the crowded timetable and everyone is in a hurry, or rapidly everyone is hasty and wants to go, and the father wants to take the children in the car to the school, so you find yourself, eat, put this in mouth, put as if you are feeding animals. Okay? This at the end is going to result again in difficulty in digestion and psychological problems, and sometimes children hate the process of eating because they find it very stressful and it's full. Most of those parents shout at the children during eating, if not spanking them also or slapping them on the faces. This is of course very dangerous, and most of these children get into different types of phobias or different types of what's called food disorders or feeding disorders, and this is what I'm going to speak about in the next segments, like what's called the pica or the bulimia or the binge eating, such abnormal, psychologically abnormal types of feeding processes. I hope by this I can answer the question of Mrs. Salma, and what I advise her not to stress on this and to put to the child a small amount of food, because also, by the way, sometimes people put big dishes full of food to the children and tell him eat, away from presenting it in an undelicious way. Leave this is another problem. But the amount is unhuman. A child, 4 years old, the dish size or the amount of food put in the dish is exactly the same as his father's. This is unlogic. And you know what's the problem? The problem is that those people blame their children that they do not finish their dishes, which is a very unhuman and unlogic amount put to them. His stomach is just maybe as this size, and she is putting him a dish like this. How come? By logic. How come the child is going to eat all this? Okay? And another great problem happens by this way of raising children, that they lose their self-confidence. They lose their self-confidence by eating. You know how? Because this child doesn't find himself finish anything in his life or do it in a good way, even eating. If you go with the child to other stations in life, like the study table, like the classroom work, like making a puzzle, for example, or playing football with his friends, or doing any type of activity, all the time the accusations, the pointing, parents say, you didn't finish your work, you didn't complete the game, you left something, some of the questions in the homework are not solved, and so on. Even the food he eats, you didn't finish your food. You know, what's going to be the result after all these unfinishings? The end is a child who is losing self-confidence, because he knows very well that he doesn't finish anything, either homework or helping someone or even eating his food. Let us have a break and come back to finish our topic.
You are never alone. You are never alone.
Let's talk.
So this is something that you have to point out to them in the Bible.
Something which is, I think, very rarely needed by the youth, which is staying firm on the truth.
This is just one of the greatest examples for me of how to control your anger.
Within the framework of being the cleanest religion, the cleanest jurisprudence, and in the meantime, the kindest religion to animals.
Watch Let's Talk with Khalil Amanet as he interviews guests and discusses a variety of topics, everything from youth issues to religious issues. Join us here on Hoda TV.
The main concepts of Islamic economics, how is it different from the Western theories?
And the beauty about Islam is not that it just came as a religion to perfect the relationship of the servant of Allah with Allah, but also it came to perfect the relationship of the servant of Allah with others. The beauty about Islam comes and brings the interest of the public and the interest of the individual together.
How is Islamic banking different from the traditional banking system?
The concept of riba is that I lend you money, I give you a loan, in return that you give me back that loan with an extra at the top.
The idea of the stock market itself is halal or haram.
So these are the main conditions that the scholars put with regards of the share market.
You are never alone. You are never alone.
Welcome back. We are in the last segment speaking about eating disorders. And I hope that we can finish in this short time the remainder of what are the ideas in my mind about this topic. Of course, why we are speaking about this? We are speaking because this is one of the rights of our children and our wives and husbands to eat in peace, and to make food and feeding a relaxing experience. Because we are suffering nowadays in every moment of our life. I think all over the world, not just here in Cairo, for example, and not in the countries where revolutions and actions are going on. No, in every part of the world nowadays, maybe every minute or every part of time is full of work, stress, thinking, and anxiety, hopes. This is not bad, this is dynamic. But of course, in between, you want some times of relaxation. And I think it's very logic to have relaxation in times like the feeding time, or the food time, or the dining time, and also in the sleeping time. Therefore, in the last time we were speaking about, in the last episode, we were speaking about sleep disorders. It's a hell if you feel tired and not sleeping well, not eating well. So where is the time that you are going to feel relaxed? By the way, responding to what our friend Omar has been speaking about, I think the next episode, inshallah, will be about, to my mind, romantic touches between the couple or the husband and his wife. This might be, inshallah, the topic in the next week, inshallah. Now, let us continue what we were speaking about. Actually, I had a conversation with one of the doctors, a negotiation about the idea of children who are, you all the time are asking them, Ahmed, come to eat, Mona, come to eat, Salma, it's time for food, Layla, what are you doing? We were shouting and asking you to come to eat with us, where are you? All the time you are asking them to come to eat. Well, I was speaking with that doctor and I told her, I think, to my mind, you can call the child once, and after that, but in a good voice and a heard sound, and then you put the food in the fridge, and whenever she is ready, she can come and take the food, and we can put it, for example, in the oven or to have it heated, and then she eats it. She said, well, this means that you are reckless. You are not careful about raising children in a good way. I was astonished. I said, how come? I'm telling you that I'm not going to run after her and tell her, please come, I beg you, come to eat with us. I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to put the food, if she doesn't come or she doesn't want, I'm going to put, of course, it's the preferable type of food she wants, and it's presented in a good way, in a heated way, a very delicious way, and she is hungry, so everything is prepared that she can eat. If she refuses, I'm not going to shout, or I'm not going to beg her, I'm just going to put the food in the fridge and wait whenever she wants. She said, no, please, close this fridge with the key. I said, how come? She said, that's the point. The fridge you're speaking about, or you put the food inside, close it with the key, and she's not going to eat until the next meal time. In other words, if this battle or this way of begging is going on during lunchtime, she's not going to eat except in the supper time at the evening. I was astonished. I said, how come, like mothers who are anxious? I said, but you know, they are kids and they get hungry, and you know. She said, well, you are not caring about your children more than me. and I'm not harsh with my children. The point is organization. I want to organize the children. So food times or feeding times are like prayer times. Okay, the question is, when does this start? Because we every time hear people who are saying that infants should be regulated in their feeding times. For example, what's called the o'clock method. Every 2 hours, you can breastfeed your child. Every 2 hours, you can breastfeed your child. This is a system. But there is another system other than the o'clock method, is called the on-demand method. These classifications are very old, but it's still going on. And the most recent one, or the opinion that we believe in, is what's called the on-demand method and not the o'clock method. On-demand method means when the child is hungry, crying, wants to breastfeed, you can deliver the food for him, or the mother can breastfeed her child, and not to wake him up, because time now is, for example, 8 o'clock, which is the time according to the table. No, this is not right. We have to feed our children on demand, at least for the first 2 years. From after that, we can start to regulate or to organize the time, and not by pressure, not compulsory. It's time by time until the child gets the habit. Everything gets gradually. Weaning gets gradually. It's not in the end of the second year like sharp knife cut. No, but it takes its time. It's mentioned in the Holy Quran that the mothers who want to wean their children can breastfeed their children for 2 years long, and they have to keep stuck to their children during this time. This means that they can hug them, play with them, and be with them everywhere they go. But after 2 years, this is my advice to you, after the 2 years end of breastfeeding, and the child is 2 years old, please let him get rid of this and be a little independent. So put him in a nursery or put him in a kindergarten in order to be mixed with children. This is a very common question that comes on the mouths of so many parents. Why do we send our children to school? The answer, the usual answer, the logic answer is to educate them. This is wrong. We do not send our children to schools to educate them. We send them to socialize, to mix with other children. Because it's easy to bring teachers to my home to teach our children and to give them science. But it is difficult to bring 50 children with my child in order to squeeze or to tease him and play with him and make him experience all types of social experiences that he experiences at schools. Also, there is a very important point during discussing or examining feeding and eating problems in children, that the doctors or those who are experimenting this or testing the children has to follow international tests. Like, for example, in England there is what's called the Dundee University score for the times of the difficulties that find their children that appear to be during feeding time. So such types of scores has to be followed by doctors to be very accurate in diagnosing the problem. We have what's called craving, that some types of children like to eat strange things or rare things. Well, you can give it to them and there is no difficulty in this or no fear of giving them such types of food. Also, we have what's called the pica and the bulimia, and all these types. Pica is eating something that is not eatable, and the pica is having, the bulimia is having attacks of sudden eating of so many things at one time. Well, I think, I'm sorry, but we are running out of time, so let me give you our email, and I'm ready, of course, to answer any question in the points I didn't answer in this episode. Our email is familyissues@hoda.tv, and I hope that in this episode and maybe other episodes we can mention or answer any unanswered question. So thank you very much for following us, and hope to see you in the next episode of Family Issues. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
You are never alone. You are never alone. Through sorrow and through grief, through happiness and peace, you are never alone. So now, as you long for your past, prepare for your future, but knowing nothing's gonna last. You see, this life is but a road, a straight and narrow path to our final abode. So travel well, O Muslim, and paradise will be your home. And always remember